There are probably some areas of your life that you are limiting yourself right now, and you may not even realize it. And there I was in this completely foreign and dark place, crying my fucking eyes out every single day. You are the creator of your own reality at every step of the way. You need to rededicate yourself to this. Like, what is it specifically that you are after? Hello, gorgeous beings. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Skye Hanley. I'm going to break down some of the major things I've been journeying over the last few years. I have MS. I have multiple sclerosis. I could wake up one day and have an eye that never works again. I could wake up one day and have a leg that never works again. I felt like such a fucking failure for everything that I am and everything that I do. This all taught me amazing lessons and who I've been able to become along that journey. And I bring those lessons here to you now.
Cosmic Money, the podcast. The strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
Hello, gorgeous beings. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, Skye Hanley. Hi. And look, I'm actually bringing you like a really, I think it's an interesting podcast today. And for me, you know, it's obviously really close to heart. I'm going to be sharing with you guys an amazing, 2-part series. This is part 1 of some of the really big things I've had to journey, or I've been journeying, over the last few years. And what I'm hoping that in sharing these stories now, in being, really fucking vulnerable, because let me tell you, I'm on an edge here today, sharing this stuff with you, that in this, in this sharing, in these stories, in all of this, that there is some medicine, perhaps catharticism, for me, and medicine somehow in this for you too. And I trust the universe enough that if something is alive in me, that it feels aligned to bring to you. And if you are here listening to this right now, as I said, it means that there is something, in this for you, for me, for us all. So as I suggested, today is in fact part 1, and part 1 of a story, right? I'm going to break down, as I said, some of the major things I've been journeying over the last few years. And in this one story, in this lived experience of what's been going on for me, right? Because life is happening for me, not to me. There's actually 2 stories amongst this. All right. 2 different, there was many major things going on, I'm sure, but 2 major things going on. Today's lessons in part 1 are all around what I learned, over the last few years and last year in particular in relation to losing 20 kilograms of weight. And the thing is, I'm actually not even done yet. And I'm going to share with you what all of that means and how I feel about it all. And and what I learned in particular. I'm giving you 3 big lessons that I learned in particular about business in relation to losing 20 kilos. All righty. Part 2 of this story that is interwoven and layered. And look, you're going to get a lot of the story today, but I want to bring to you, more lessons in relation to what I learned from the destruction and the rebuild of my most intimate relationship with my partner. And, and as I said, this was something, I journeyed, and I did not plaster across social media, because I truly believe that as we are learning, the same as last year with my weight loss, that wasn't something that I was plastering across social media and unpacking every single day and living and breathing it. I was personally, and I'll talk to you about all of that. But I also think that some journeys for a time are simply for us. And if you're a coach in particular who's out there listening to this, we just don't have to have everything online. I am not into hiding things. Don't get me wrong. I am such an open book. If you had to ask me about any of these things in the last couple of years, oh my gosh, I would tell you everything. It's no drama. However, I knew that I would come out another side, and that having a different perspective means that now I can sit here in embodiment, in certainty, in being a permission slip, in inspiration, and in stability, because sometimes we are simply too vulnerable while raw while we are moving through something, and we don't necessarily have to plaster it all across the internet, although that is not the lesson of today. We will put that there as a little side note. All right. So I have to give you guys context, and this really will pertain to both part one and part two. All right. So the context is that, when 2020 came around, I mean, we all know what happened then, the whole kind of COVID thing and, and all the rest of it. During that time, although today is about weight loss, during that time, my partner and I were definitely having challenges, that there was a lot coming up for us both individually, lots of triggers and trauma. And when we were coming together, in our own dynamic, it was really tough for us to do the piece that was look after the relationship amongst that. He was very much about him, and I don't say that in a negative criticizing kind of a way, and I was very much all up in my own brain and headspace and emotions and all those different things as well. And so when we were kind of coming into maybe around that 2020 period, we were already living and breathing some, like not okay things that felt heavy. There was density, there was emotions, there was tears, there was, there was arguments, there was fights, there was, two personalities of, our no word in this household is superior, because to be honest with you, we both have a little bit of superiority within us. You guys hear me talk about, I have a healthy ego, and I probably have a healthy ego to about 90%. And the other 10% is my, is this streak of, of certainty, of rightness and righteousness, and, and that little, twinkle in there is superiority, and bless him in all of his brilliance has that as well. And so you can imagine what that may equal. And so we were living that already, 2020 hit, COVID happened, everybody started working from home. I mean, I was already working from home. And so we were already in a cooking pot, and that cooking pot, boiled and spilt over. And what that ended up equaling was the full destruction of our relationship. And I'm talking, after years and years of being together, probably about 6 years at that time, after a year of, excuse my language, but hell between us, a lot of anxiety from my perspective, a lot of avoidance from his perspective, us both journeying our own triggers and trauma and not being able to come together. Now, what it didn't mean was, like, we knew when we broke up that we loved each other. We knew that we loved each other. We knew that, that in some way we knew that the universe actually had already put us together to journey a lot of these things, because I feel like a lot of my triggers and trauma, show up in him and vice versa. A lot of his will show up in me. And, that's probably the mirror, right, that the universe puts up for us anyway. And so, when I say full destruction, I mean, house packed up, done and done. Like, I moved in the middle of lockdown, to the point that, it was the really tough lockdown here in Sydney at that time, I believe in the middle of 2021. And where you weren't even allowed to see anyone within a 5-kilometer radius. And so when I had to move, this is just a little side note, when I had to move, we actually had to move the house after 9 p.m. at night, because you were not allowed to be in communal public areas where there could be a lot of people while you're doing a move like this. Craziness, you guys, craziness. So you weren't allowed to be in these public spaces. So we had to move after, we had to move me after 9 p.m. at night, the removalists and, that kind of thing. And we went until about 2 a.m. And I moved into an amazing unit, my own little space that simply did not feel like mine at all. Of course, my partner and I, again, like about 6-7 years in at that point, about 7 years at that point, and and we lived together that entire time. And so to move to a totally different suburb, a unit that simply wasn't mine, to move out of my home, literally, to give up everything, to not be able to see my family or friends. You were not allowed to leave 5 kilometer radius. You couldn't see people, and there I was in this completely foreign, and dark place, right? Crying my fucking eyes out every single day at what, literally, it sounds so dramatic when I say it out loud, but literally what my life had become. And I felt like such a fucking failure for everything that I am and everything that I do, and everything that I sprout from the rooftops and all the rest of it. Like, the destruction of that piece of my life and my existence, and the year that had come previous to that eventuation, was in fact, a lot. I mean, of course it would be, right? Like, it's a breakdown, it's a break up. And so, I was living and breathing that. That was my reality, not being able to see anyone in a completely foreign place, literally crying my eyes out every single day, the same as everybody else, trying to make our way through, the whole kind of fear-based COVID thing. And again, being here in Sydney for lockdown. So I was very isolated. I was very alone, and I definitely felt it. And as I said, I felt like a complete failure at that time. Now, what happened over the next 6 months is definitely, absolutely a story for part two. All right. But what I want to say to you is the pivotal moments that did, in fact, occur in relation to why I ended up needing to, release 20 kilos of weight. And I will break that down for you a little bit further in a second, just giving context. I'm just giving you my life story, the context here for a sec. What happened over the next 6 months? Obviously, a lot of stress, a lot of moving through things, a lot of tears, and again, a lot of fear. Now, I have to say this. I have to say this because, all right, I am not pro-vax and I am not anti-vax. All right, I am myself personally very vax hesitant. Again, for those of you who know, I have MS, I have multiple sclerosis. Like, look it up. It's not great. It's not what you'd pick for yourself. However, I live very healthily with that, indeed, because I absolutely look after myself. It is an autoimmune condition. It is an autoimmune condition of the brain and the spinal cord, right? And so if the immune system decides for whatever reason to attack the brain, it literally leaves brain damage. All right, you guys. And quite often, or the neurological belief is irreversible brain damage. That is the Russian roulette gun to my head that I live with, every single day. All right. So when it came to, being in lockdown and all of the fear and different things that were coming up and society and beliefs and opinions and stuff like that. And, and even for me, like, I was definitely vax hesitant. I really kind of didn't want to do it, like, because I thought, why would I put something in my body, that has the ability to potentially kick off an immune response in a body that already has, like a hyperimmunity, right? And I questioned that, and I really struggled with that at that time as well. And I landed in a place where I did, in fact, end up getting the vaccine myself. Um, uh, and as I said, I'm not anti, I'm not pro. I am in fact pro-choice. So there is no judgment here. I literally, made my decisions for me based on the information I had at hand and what I thought was right at that moment. Would I probably change my decision now? Yes, in hindsight, and you'll hear why in a second. But hindsight is an amazing thing. I wish we could do change that, but we simply can't. So I did. I got the vaccine, highly hesitant because I had to weigh up on the scale, what the vaccine would be like in my body or what COVID could have done to me, without, a level of protection let's not go into what you do or do not believe, but that was simply what I was weighing up at the time. And I thought, okay, and I went with the vax to give myself that level of protection due to the loaded gun I already had at my head. And I simply made the best decision I could at the time. And, and I will never do anything like that again, to be honest with you. But that is my choice. And because, oh goodness, because unfortunately, my greatest fears were proven right. And the second vaccine kicked off the worst MS relapse that I've ever had in my life. And I could almost burst into tears telling you about this. I'm just going to hold it together for today. All right. It gives me goosebumps, but not the good kind that I normally get, because that MS relapse was indeed so bad that I genuinely believed and thought that I was not coming back from it. All right. And that is the level of danger, for me. And to be honest with you guys, I'm going to be super vulnerable here. My greatest fear on this planet, my absolute greatest fear, is because I have MS and because it is a bit of a loaded gun, it can be. And I truly believe, look, thank you for the diagnosis, but it's not necessarily my prognosis. But when I really tap into, well, what would be my greatest fear on this planet? It's one thing to have something like that. It is another thing to not be able to deal with it as yourself, right? Because MS takes that part away from you. MS, gnaws at your brain. It distorts reality. It leaves you not functional. It takes memory and capacity and functionality. And when I had that second vax, and it literally kicked off the worst MS relapse I've had, in my life. I'm talking about, literally laying sideways in bed for the best part of 3 months. That is how unwell I was. I pulled it together for an hour here and there for a few things that I needed to do, to keep things rolling on. But aside from that, literally I could have been laying in a white room, and it honestly would have been too much and too much of a brain overload. And during that time, as I said, there was literal brain damage occurring, and inflammation within my brain that, is hard to control. All right. And so I was sick for 3 months, very sick. And it took me a further 3+ months after that to actually get back to full capacity. And during that 6 months, that I was unwell, I truly believed I wasn't coming back from it, because it really did not feel like I was. And, to be honest with you, I know that relapse took a portion of me, that I am 98% the sparkle that I was previous. And it's taken the last couple of years to get back to, even this level that I am now, And so that happened. And amongst that, more fear, and amongst that, more stress, and amongst that, more emotions and more choices that I had to make. Because one of the only ways that you are able to to help and support MS in a moment of actual, attack, a relapse, they're called, while brain damage is specifically happening, is to take, steroidal anti-inflammatories. All right. And if anyone's out there that's ever been on steroidal anti-inflammatories, there are quite a few things that they do. And we'll talk about that in a second. Off the back of that relapse, fear, decisions, choices to be weighed up. And I was in fear because I knew that I had lost a part of myself. I knew that I had lost spark. I knew that I had lost memory and capacity. And I am so proud of the human that I am today. Like, again, that healthy ego piece. And I want to keep being this amazing human. And I want to keep just being out there and serving at my highest and greatest. And I'm so lucky that I comfortably get to live as myself every single day. That, that is joyousness to me. And to be in a time period where I was acutely aware of how much of myself was gone was paining. And I couldn't just bring it back. It doesn't work like that. It's, and that's so hard to explain to anyone that maybe doesn't necessarily have something neurological. But, literal brain damage. You know, I could wake up one day and have an eye that never works again. I could wake up one day and have a leg that never works again. Those things don't necessarily scare me half as much as waking up and never being myself again. Crazy.
I've spent my life obsessed with the strategy and energetics of 7-figure business. I've literally traveled the world trying to crack the code. And what I've found is that when you couple the pursuit of making massive amounts of money with the strategy and science of success, plus having a desire for significant impact and contribution, magic happens. That's why I created a free 21-day next level vortex money mission magic. Hell yes to that. This 21-day quantum business challenge is here to shift you into new timelines and realities. 21 days to quantum shift your impact, business, and your bank account. These carefully crafted and channeled tools are the exact things I've used to create a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm not done yet. If you're ready for incredible transformation now in all areas of your life, more money and financial freedom, freedom of time, freedom of lifestyle, freedom of choice, better, more connected relationships, greater levels of health, and simply calling in more magic into every single day, then these 21 days are going to blow your mind. 21 days of powerful universal, behavioral, and strategic tools to quantum shift your internal state so that you start to see massive changes in your external reality, bringing the metaphysical into the physical. Join the challenge now and get ready for the most powerful 21-day expansion to quantum shift your impact, business, bank account, and your life. Cosmic Money, the podcast, the strategy and energetics of 7-figure business.
So anyway, this is, what is this story I'm telling you guys? And so a new choice was made that I decided to go onto another medication. For those of you who know and have followed my journey over years and years, I look after myself and my own MS in completely, natural ways, like sleep, reduction of stress, which obviously I hadn't done very well in the year or two previous to that. Things like healthy, whole foods, exercise, living my best life every single day, all of these amazing things, supplementation that I do so that I do not have to be medicated. And I look after myself so fucking well, to not have to do something like that. And I made the very tough choice in that moment to go on a full immune suppressant to shut down my immune system, to a great extent, so that, this overreaction that was taking so much of me, the human, me, the personality, me, the spark, to stop that in its tracks. Now, why do I tell you all of this? Because I wanted to give context to the greater story. I wanted to give context to the overall of everything that happened. And I wanted to give context to the 5 kilos that went on because of stress and, COVID times and, not moving as much as we did and, the destruction and emotions and hormones of, of a total breakdown of a relationship. I want to give you context for, the further 5 kilos. As I said, there was 5 kilos from simply just being COVID times. I hear that there was something called the COVID 4 and that most people actually, in fact, put on about 4 kilos through COVID, through lockdowns and stuff like that. Give me a shout out if that was you, but the average was generally about 4 kilos. And I put that on. And then I put on another 5 due to the hormones, due to the stress, due to the relationship breakdown, due to the cortisols. My hormones love to fuck themselves up anyway. And so that absolutely happened. I then put on another 5 kilos from the prednisone, needing to take that to stop the MS relapse that was happening in its track. And that 5 kilos probably happened, I reckon, it wouldn't even have been 5 weeks because I was probably only on prednisone for the best part of about 20 days, But that is part of what prednisone done. It makes you put on weight, it makes you retain weight, and it makes you hungry as fuck, let me tell you. And so there was all of that. And then when I went on the immune suppressants, by the time I was on the immune suppressants, look, there is a good story here. You know, my partner and I were indeed back together at that point. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I said that there were two, you know, big fucking no's from me, you know, because I knew that these were potentialities from going on the immune suppressant. To be honest with you, there was three. The first one that is a little bit irrelevant to the overall story is opportunistic infection and simply being unwell, because you cannot modulate switching off an immune system very well. It's either one or the other. And again, I was in such fear on the other side of the coin, fear of if I didn't take it, you know, and fear if I did, because fear if I didn't take it, I could lose who I am forever. Fuck that. And let me just be dramatic for a second. And I don't say this for anybody else's life or offense or anything along those lines. You know, the fear of being a vegetable for the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form is like, you know, as I said, the worst fucking thing. What lost potential, what loss of life and life force and, you know, and desire and all of the things that, you know, and courage and all the things that I am. I don't want to lose those pieces. And so that was one side of that coin, to choose immune suppression. And the other side of it was, you know, was, well, what the fuck does that then, you know, what is the reaction to that? Of shutting down an immune system, not being able to modulate it, not being able to pick and choose. You have to shut down the whole thing at a greater scale, you know? And so that is what I chose to do. And I chose that in a time of fear. And fear as well. I mean, you know, talk about stress, talk about cortisol, talk about hormones, you know, completely fucking out after the anxiety of the year and a half previous to that. Oh my God. And so I went on immune suppressant, and there were three things that I was worried about. One, opportunistic infection and shutting down, you know, the entirety of my immune system. The second thing that I was worried about was, in fact, and this is going to sound like a funny one, hair loss, because hair loss and losing your hair can, in fact, be a side effect of the immune suppressant that I chose. And the third thing was weight gain. And I said to my partner at the time, I said, I swear to fucking God, if I start losing my hair, or, you know, like something that I you know, I love my hair too, you guys, and I know I get a lot of compliments about it. Thank you. You know, love that. I love that compliment. But it's so very me, isn't it? Look, I'm just going to give it a zhuzh now because it's not big enough yet. Let's just puff it up, right? Because if you think of me and you know me, like, probably my hair is a little bit quintessentially me as well, right? And so that was a fucking non-negotiable. And the third thing was obviously weight gain. And let me tell you, all three of those things started kicking in. I was having random weird opportunistic infections. I had pneumonia, you know, all this kind of stuff that I would never have had before. It sounds funny, but my immune constitution is actually quite good. You know, my partner could have something and literally be sleeping next to me every single night, and I won't catch it off him. So although I have a hyperimmune response, you know, which is MS, autoimmune disease, right? So they believe, absolutely, like having, you know, these weird opportunistic infections start kicking in. I was like, well, this is fucked. The second thing is my hair was coming out in clumps, you guys. I'm talking about, like, I would wash my hair and I would have an entire, like, fistful, my entire hand, like, densely would be full of you know, would be full of hair. And to be honest with you, even since then, I don't know, like, I feel like my hair hasn't fully recovered yet. And we're a couple of years down the track now, and I still feel as if my hair is recovering, you know? And so I was like fistfuls every single day. My hair was falling out. And the third thing was, within 4 months, I put on another 5 kilos, right? And so there's the 20 kilos of weight gain, you know? And so I tell you this because it gives context to, you know, to existence, to life, to what went on, to why that was there and needed to come off. And I think, to be honest with you, I tell you this as a justification as well, because a portion of me is almost embarrassed that that occurred. And although I didn't have full control, and to be honest with you, there were probably portions I could have had greater control over. At the time, my capacity was diminished. I was moving through so much. So Um, that is the journey of what went on. That is, how I got to the place where there was 20 kilos to lose. Now, let me tell you, moving into 2022, that was a year of experiment. That was a year of trying a few different things, like old stuff that had worked previously before had in fact, stopped working now, and I couldn't figure out like what I needed to do, how I could change and adapt and get my body to do the things that I wanted it to do that entire year. Although I came off the immune suppression after 4 months, I was like, fuck this. I can make a more informed decision now. I've moved out of the time period of emotion. I've moved out of the time period of fear. I tried the thing and I get to fucking choose differently. And I'm not beating myself up for the choices that I made at that time, but I didn't marry that decision. And so therefore, I got to choose differently. And so that, in fact, is exactly what I did. And so I came off immune suppressant, and in the last 2 years, I've had no MS relapses or any problems with anything like that. As I hadn't for the 2 or 3 years previous to that. My MS had not been a problem. And I continue to look after myself. Naturally and in a lot of amazing different ways. But the flow-on effect from those immune suppressants, from the prednisone, and from a system that was full, like I did cortisol testing, as in stress hormones, and mine were fucking through the roof, and all of the rest of my hormones were completely out of whack, because of that time period, right? Chronic low-grade stress across, excuse me, let me say it again. Chronic low-grade stress across extended periods of time are the greatest contributors to disease manifestation. Alrighty. And I had been in 2 years of chronic low-grade stress, between the year of my relationship, between the 6 months of it absolutely breaking down, between me moving during the height of COVID, between the 6 months of me getting really fucking sick and losing a huge portion of myself that I believed I wasn't coming back from, like that was a tough couple of years in there. And with a lot of hope and with a lot of love and with a lot of universe having my back, even when it felt like it fucking didn't. Right. And so that is my justification of why I ended up in the place that I ended up. But what is super exciting and what I'm going to share with you now is the most amazing lessons that I got to learn off the back of all of that, off the back of that 2 years of crazy, intenseness and lessons from the universe and all the rest of it. So there I was, 20 kilograms overweight, immune system fucked, hormones fucked, life back on track. And yet, I finally had the capacity to start being able to do something, about my own body, about my own health, about putting mastery back into existence and life, and really stepping forward into the person that I wanted to become and that I knew was available to me. However rocky the last 2 years simply had been. And so, 2022 for me very much was about, testing and measuring and adapting and not quite being able to find the thing that would work. That, as I said before, all the old ways of doing things like simply were not working for me anymore, And so I did. I tested, I measured, I adapt, and finally, towards the end of 2022, it took me the entire year. Oh my goodness, I didn't even tell you guys in May. This is so irrelevant, but I'm just going to tell you anyway. So, it was in fact approximately, let's say, March or something like that, when I started to get a little bit better after that 6 months that I was in fact quite sick. I started to play soccer again in around March. I still wasn't my full capacity. It took way into maybe May to start feeling a little bit better again. And while I was playing soccer, You guys, oh my goodness. I actually ended up having a really like kind of horrific injury where I was landing and a girl swept my ankle as my entire body weight was landing into that ankle, that foot. And literally, I feel like we karate kidded it. It just exploded, like my ankle exploded out the side. I literally am missing ligaments now. So I did full tears of ligament, partial tears of ligaments. I ripped tendons off the bone compression, nerve damage, and it was actually broken all along as well, which they kind of missed. But to be honest with you, it being broken was probably the least of the problematic things out of everything. And so that in itself, during 2022, while I'm trying to lose 20 kilograms of weight I now cannot stand up, my immune system is just completely deregulated. My hormones are out of whack, including all of my like stress hormones, which were then canceling out all of my, my estrogens and progesterones and testosterones and all of these amazing things were no longer functioning appropriately. And literally I was injured for 7 months. So from May to December, I literally wasn't able to exercise on my, on my legs whatsoever. So it was really tricky, to get my system back on track and to shake off everything that I needed to shake off. And in December of 2022, it came into my vision of this particular protocol. Now, I'm not saying this protocol is for everyone, but it was different. It was transformative. It was something that I hadn't tried before through a company called Simpler. There's no E in that. Simpler Health. I will be getting my amazing coach, Emma, who is an Olympic gymnast, on our program to have a conversation. And I will also be getting Dean Kilby, who is the managing director of Simpler Health. And he's actually out there doing some amazing research in stem cells and transformative things within the medical paradigm, as well as, running this beautiful metabolic reset program. And now when I say metabolic reset, think people generally like, and I'm just going to pick like a really easy example. Think like a trucker, who is probably stressed out, sleep deprived, working shifts, not looking after themselves, has what's called comorbidities. So like, diabetes, high blood pressure, is obese in medical terminology. All of those different kinds of pieces all culminating in the way that their body is expressing, and I, air quotes, health at that period of time. And so I came, or rather, Simpler Health came into my vision, and I thought, well, this is different, and this is transformative, and this is supportive, and this, and this I can try, this I can do, and as well, I thought, well, with, how, excuse my language, fucked my systems were, although I didn't necessarily fit the perfect mold of who this program was predominantly for. I, again, being a nutritionist myself, an exercise specialist, I have an understanding of how the mechanisms within this protocol could then translate across to what it is that I was going through. And so in December, literally a week before Christmas of 2022, I started protocol. I started, this way of living, being, eating, and full disclosure, it took me a few months. It probably took me 3 months to really start nailing the protocol. It took another 3 months with very intermittent results for things to start sort of working, but also for some of my own personal edges to come up as well. Because to be honest with you, one of the things that I chose to do as part of this protocol was to start eating meat again. And I had been, gluten-free, dairy-free vegetarian for many years for the purposes of health, for the purposes of looking after my own best health in relation to MS, because it is highly anti-inflammatory to be on a high plant-based diet. However, as I said, those things, the way I knew in which to be was no longer working for me any longer. And continuing down a fully plant-based protocol, and I'm not against it. I love it. It is, to be honest with you, my preferred way to be and to eat. But simply, I had to come to terms with the fact that that was not functioning in the metabolic makeup that I was sitting in at that period of time for pretty much the duration of 2022, while I was trying to already, through my own understandings, fix the damage that had been done. But I could not get my body, in all of my geniuses, to do what it is that I needed it to do. So I needed further external information and a different way of doing things to get the result that I was after. Because staying in 20 kilograms of overweightness and a non-functioning immune system and having having a really out of whack hormonal spectrum is going to be equally as damaging, stressed out, like a stressed out, burnt out, overwhelmed system, let alone the person, living in that body, is at the end of the day is going to be equally as distressing to MS, the thing that I look after myself, greatly for, right? So the choice to have to go back onto meat, to get a new result, to be able to lose the weight, to get my metabolism back on track, to have my hormones rebalance themselves in a way they needed to rebalance, and, to feed myself still for, great immune function required something different of me. And as I said, Simpler Health, came into my vision, and these amazing humans, but it still took time. And I'm here, as I said, to give you the 3 greatest lessons from my 20 kilograms of weight loss, and the journey that happened, leading up to the requirement to lose that weight, but then also the journey of losing that weight. And I've given you so much context, today as to why I was the human that landed in that place. But it wasn't just about transforming my body. It was kind of never fully that. It was also being able to transform my own expectations of myself. And in 2023, the entire year of 2023, as I said, December 2022 to December 2023 was 20 kilograms of weight, but it was not simply the physical transformation. It was also the mental one.
I've spent my life obsessed with the strategy and energetics of 7-figure business. I've literally traveled the world trying to crack the code. And what I've found is that when you couple the pursuit of making massive amounts of money with the strategy and science of success, plus having a desire for significant impact and contribution, magic happens. That's why I created a free 21-day next level vortex money mission magic. Hell yes to that. This 21-day quantum business challenge is here to shift you into new timelines and realities. 21 days to quantum shift your impact, business, and your bank account. These carefully crafted and channeled tools are the exact things I've used to create a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm not done yet. If you're ready for incredible transformation now in all areas of your life, more money and financial freedom, freedom of time, freedom of lifestyle, freedom of choice, better, more connected relationships, greater levels of health, and simply calling in more magic into every single day, then these 21 days are going to blow your mind. 21 days of powerful universal, behavioral, and strategic tools to quantum shift your internal state so that you start to see massive changes in your external reality, bringing the metaphysical into the physical. Join the challenge now and get ready for the most powerful 21-day expansion to quantum shift your impact, business, bank account, and your life. Cosmic Money, the podcast, the strategy and energetics of 7-figure business.
So the first lesson that I want to give you, because what I'm talking about right now is the perfect segue straight into that, is the dedication and the devotion that it required of me. That for me to call in a new next level version of myself required me to do things that I have simply never done or have not done for a while, or, like again, even just eating meat. That was a journey. That wasn't necessarily easy. And it's not because, can I just please say, I try to be a person of non-judgment as best as I possibly can. I can't say that I'm a person of non-judgment. I don't think any of us can really say that. In relation to whether you personally out there eat meat or don't eat meat, I honestly have no judgment, opinion, perspective upon that, and I know this is going to sound really weird and you're going to understand why I don't have a judgment. My non-eating of meat never really had anything to do with animals at all. And I know that sounds really bad. I do, I do have some of those feelings in there, the consumption of another soul seems a bit weird, but that was never it. It was purely selfish. It was purely for anti-inflammatory diet protocols to support me with what I needed to be my best self long term. But that changed because our bodies change, our metabolisms change, our biochemistry changes, and it required something different of me. But I had been the way that I had been. I had eaten in a particular fashion for such an extended period of time. We're talking like 7 years at that point. So to then go, okay, everything that I believe is actually going to be the most helpful thing for me to move forward is maybe not the most helpful thing that my body actually truly needs right now. To back that up with the proof of 2020 and not actually getting a result throughout that year, and having to make a different decision for the purposes of change and up levelment, and to understand that, to get to a place that I've never been, I needed to do things that I'd never done before. And when I say that the lesson of 2023 and the hardest, time and the lessons of, 20 kilograms of weight loss was really about mastery. And I picked that as my word of the year last year. I was like, mastery. I want to show up until I want to rinse and repeat within reason, to have that level of dedication, that level of devotion to myself and my goals. Because I promise you, let me tell you a little bit of a catalyst that happened. I went to a retreat in Bali in around let's say the middle of the year. So I had done 3 months that it took me to get myself really nailing this protocol like 100 fucking percent, right? Like without wiggle room, without contingency, without backdoors, without compromise, the whole thing. It took me 3 months to really instill this new habit, a new way of being. I then had 3 months where my body was still trying to fucking get used to this new way of being. And so I wasn't necessarily getting the most amazing results because there was so much damage that needed to be reversed and so much damage done, both physically and in my own mental capacity and the way that I was thinking about even the protocol and my need to be there on it. And I think some self-judgment probably came up. And please don't get me wrong. I want to say one more thing. I really fucking enjoyed the squishy years. Like I actually really did. It was nice to not give a fuck for a little while, but not giving a fuck is not really my norm. And so, I had to swing back into giving a little bit more of a fuck because my capacity at that time during those 2 hardest years, and where my focuses were lying within my relationship and within, survival mode, as so many of us were, and then within health in relation to MS, is a different health than being able to have the capacity to focus on overall health and well-being at that time. I did not have that capacity throughout that 2 years. It's that simple. And so being able to transition, takes a little bit of time. And so, within the middle of 2023, going on this beautiful retreat. I was gone for 15 days. It was about 15 days to be honest with you. So it was quite an extended period of time to be away. And I was just a little bit like, fuck this and fuck that. And I've been doing this fucking thing for, 6 months now. And my results just aren't what they should be or what I expect. My entitlement kicked in, right? My results just aren't where they should be and what I expect. And, and all the rest of it. And like all the head noise creeped in. And so I gave myself permission And I don't, whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, I believe all things happen divinely anyway. But I gave myself permission to be off protocol while I was away. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure while I was away for that 15 days, when I was coming back, I don't know that I was coming back to being on protocol. I really don't think I was. I was like, I'm done with this fucking bullshit. It's not working. I've tried all the things. I'm doing what they say, like entitlement, shoulds, like all of those pieces, head noise, head noise, head noise. And although, what I went back to while I was away in Bali, guess what I went back to? Gluten-free, dairy-free, vegetarian, eating in beautiful health cafes that, that Bali has to offer, delicious vegetables and nutrient density and all, and choice and freedom and all of these amazing things, right? And I did that for that 15 days. And I truly believe that, maybe I needed that to rejig and come back, because to be honest with you, as soon as I landed back, here, although honestly, it was like one day to the next, I thought, no, that's it. I'm no, screw protocol. I'm not doing it. And when I landed back, I was like, no, mastery, devotion, dedication, in honor of my goals. And everything that I know to be true in business, I started adopting back into my health, and everything that I understand about health, I started really adopting back into business. And so what I learned was that, we have to be able to show up, even when it's hard, even when you cannot see the results happening, and in a certain amount of trust that at some point in time, things will cascade, things will tip over, and that is definitely what started to happen for me. And I think as well that the other thing, not only, did it take me the initial 3 months of last year to actually start to nail this new way of being as a devotional practice. I probably, to be honest with you, I wasn't in devotion then. I was just in showing up and doing the fucking thing and ticking the boxes. That was the first 3 months that it took me. The next 3 months was probably entitlement, believing that I should have had results, that I was entitled to those, that I'm fucking working hard. And maybe on the oddest of occasion, what would you call them? Little things would just start creeping in where I was like, okay, well, I can have a little bite of this, or I can do maybe that, or what does it matter? I'm already not getting results this week. Why don't I just eat some of this other thing? And even though they weren't necessarily unhealthy choices, they weren't the choices I needed to be making in honor of my goal and the results that I was after in relation to dedication to this protocol. All right. And any little backdoor wiggle, there is no wiggle room, And so when I landed back from Bali and I was like, right, I am, I'm all in, I am all in. I then actually, and no word of the lie, I probably ate the exact same thing, that I still, to be honest with you, many days now. And as a nutritionist, I know how wobbly this sounds. Thank God that I know what I'm eating is nutrient dense enough for what it is, because from that day on, I literally just started eating on repeat the exact same fucking thing again and again and again. A few little variations of, I'll do vegetables this way, I'll do vegetables that way, I'll have this steak or I'll have that chicken or something. But literally, like, absolute devotion, dedication, repetition, 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 regardless of whether I could see the result or not. Because I would preach that in a business framework to my clients. You cannot be upset with the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do. And so I made that devotion of mastery and dedication to myself and to the results that I was after. And so again, every single day I showed up the same. I've literally sat there in my car, eating out of containers, halfway through an event that I'm at or something like that, to ensure that I stayed on track. 100% dedication, to myself and the results that I was after. And I remember having a conversation probably 3 months into that portion of the journey. So this is 9 months in. And I remember having a conversation. I was starting to maybe go a little bit wobbly again. I'd been, again, repetition, again, my own entitlement kicking in, thinking, well, this 20 kilos should have been coming off faster. I get it, you guys. Sitting here at the end of a year and being like, hey, I lost 20 kilos that year. That is no small feat. Like, it simply isn't. like, and the dedication that it took, literally, like, air quotes, no cheat meals, not a single bite out of line for months and months and months, being at family events, being at things, with friends, saying no to, particular choices, making sure even when I was fucking tired at home and I didn't, I'd had a huge day and I didn't feel like cooking, I would make it fucking work. Can I tell you a funny story? Let me just, like, little side note. I was so tired yesterday, so tired. And hungry and all of the things. And I used the last piece of my energy, to cook myself my meal and to make it delicious, because I just felt like, because, when you're tired, and I'm like, I just wanted something comforting. And I pulled it together and I got everything and I walked over the coffee table and I fucking threw my meal everywhere, including a Wagyu steak landing on the carpet, where my puppies are. So there was like puppy hair on this like amazing Wagyu steak. And I was like, fuck. And everything inside of me, knowing that I just used my last, the last bit that I had in the fucking tank. I'd just gotten back from the gym. I was so weak at the gym yesterday. And I got back, made this meal, was sitting down ready to just fucking crash for the night. And the next minute fucking threw it everywhere, probably because I was tired and, clumsy and whatever. And guess what I had to do? I had to get back up. I had to fucking stand in the kitchen again. Repetition. I had to make myself a new meal, every last piece of it, because my dedication to myself and my goals and the mastery of my own health and life and, being outweighs the momentary discomfort of having to say no to a friend because I can't have a cocktail that night, or no to going to a particular restaurant that doesn't serve my overall goals for right now. And I had to say that for an entire year. And it's not about not being able to go out with friends and do amazing things, but some situations serve us and some don't. And being able to adjust and find ways to be able to stay on protocol while being able to see, friends. And even when it's tricky, even when it's hard, when, I'm so tired and I've thrown my meal across the floor and I had to get back up straight away and make myself another, was not easy last night. But my goals and my dedication to myself is so much greater than that momentary discomfort of having to force myself to make myself another meal. Is this making sense, everyone? So you can hear how these lessons really apply to business and life and health and relationships and. All right. So the second lesson that I want to say to you, the thing that I learned about 9 months in, when I was starting to be a little bit wobbly again, was, I had this amazing conversation with my coach, Emma, who will be on here, as I said. We had this conversation one day. And she was like, you need to rededicate yourself to this. Like, what is it specifically that you are after? And I was like, I just want to get back to my normal, And we had this amazing, expansive conversation where it was honestly like, it's going to sound silly, you guys, but to me, it was a fucking epiphany at that time. Every area of my existence, my life, I am so about devotion, dedication, mastery, excellence, world class, exceeding expectations, expanding beyond belief. And yet somehow within my own health and my own way of being and what I expect of my own body, even, I was limiting myself because I was saying, I just want to get back to my normal. I just want to get back to normal. That's all I wanted. That was my eye on the prize for about 9 months, and to be honest with you, at the 9-month mark, I was not back to normal yet. There was still work to be done. And so I just so desperately in my brain wanted to get back to normal. And this epiphany that I had was, fuck normal. What the fuck? Why would I limit myself in such a way that I would dedicate and devote myself, to something so limiting? And I knew, and it becomes so aware because, to be honest with you, I felt like I aged in the last few years. And of course I did. I was stressed out, and all of these things, and I'm exhausted and MS and then my weight and, just feeling quite out of control. I'm so fucking ready for Botox, you guys. Oh my goodness, right? Like, I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I've aged. I felt like I had lost some good years layers in there, to this metabolic makeup and everything that was going on. And again, it was what it was. However, I was like, I want to age backwards. I want to age backwards. Why do I not get to step into a future where somehow I now get to be more amazing and more beautiful and more youthful and more, fit and, and all of this awesome stuff. And it dawned on me that, as I said, thinking that I should only get back to normal, that was somehow a limitation. And so I started to expand my vision at that point beyond that which I thought was possible for me. And that was one of the most expansive moments of my entire year, that I still hold the energy, the frequency of that now, because I'm still on that journey. I'm still on the journey of being better than I was, than I was the day before. We've all heard that, but not just in the honor of getting back to a place that, I want to be, but actually taking it a complete step further and thinking, in every ounce of my being, the same as I already do in business, what else gets to be fucking possible? And so I could see that in business. I could see that in relation to money and expansion and the millions and, and even learning and growing. Like I'm so dedicated and obsessed with learning and growing. And yet somehow this area of my life was a blind spot where I was limiting myself, thinking, oh, I just want to get back to some picture of normality, when really, what else? What other potentialities are out there when I expand my vision beyond that, beyond that which I think was possible at that time? And so that was so transformative. And the third lesson off the back of that, that I learned, as part of this journey. And what's really interesting is that from the 9-month mark, that realization onward, what's the word? And so from that 9-month mark onward, that being the catalyst for something so much more. It's really interesting and somehow doesn't surprise me at all. But once I started realizing I could dream beyond that which I thought was possible, and that actually I get to reverse age, and actually I get to dream even bigger, than expecting some form of normal or average or acceptable like level, my results actually started to increase, and not only increase, but completely snowball. And from that mark on, I reckon I actually probably lost more weight, and had better results consistently from 9 months to, 12-month plus mark that we are at now, since then, because it finally clicked. And this piece to the puzzle, in relation to not only the physical transformation that needed to occur, but the mental game one that also obviously needed to occur, that was sitting within my blind spot, that I was somehow limiting myself. And as soon as I stopped limiting myself, guess what? The results came faster. And I realized lesson number 3, something that I, again, always knew in relation to business, maybe you don't know this yet in business, all right? Maybe you're still journeying this right now. I couldn't see it. It sat out of my scope, right? For the purposes of health. But when I was able to bring those business lessons to my own health, and now I'm teaching you or telling you, sharing with you about my health journey so that you can take those lessons and actually implement them in your business, what I realized is, again, we create the reality at every level of the game. We create our reality at every level of the game. And this cascade that has now happened because I took back the power of my own belief in that which I truly believe now gets to be possible for me, the results, came faster. All right. And so the 3 things, I know, this has been a big share today, a big share in vulnerability, a big share of story. And as I said, this is simply part 1 of 2 parts, because I do have, I do have more to share in relation to who I needed to become to be in a place where, yes, there was a destruction, what is it called? A soul death, right? A realization of shadow self and things like that, and my own portions to play in the destruction, as well as the rebirth and rebuilding of a relationship that is so much more now than I could have ever fabricated, created, crafted myself. And there is so much more in this journey that I have to share with you. But for the first part of this, to give the context of, two of the hardest years of my life, plus a year that felt like I was in a holding pattern, to then be able to come out on the other side with another year of work. Let me tell you, this is 4 years in the making, you guys. 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 to land where we are now, the beginning of 2024, where I'm sharing this journey, this podcast with you, right? Because I can, because embodiment takes dedication, it takes mastery, and I also truly believe it takes a result. And so I sit here now on the other side of that health result with the lessons that I get to bring and share with you right now. Dedication, mastery, devotion, that you do not need to settle in any way, shape, or form. And there are probably some areas of your life that you are limiting yourself right now, and you may not even realize it, like I didn't realize it in relation to my health and how I get to be over the next year, over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. I intend to reverse age, right? And I'm super excited for some of the bigger, more extreme goals that I actually have now in relation to that. And understanding as well, the final lesson of today is that you are the creator of your own reality at every step of the way. I created 2020, I created the destruction of a relationship. I created, 2022 and that health spectrum and, and choices that I made. 2021. I created 2022, fucking ankle injury, you guys. That was the worst. Let me tell you, I still don't have those ligaments. They are gone, gone to the universe now. I fell in a ditch the other day. That was not fun, because I had no ligaments to keep me upright, right? But this all taught me amazing lessons, and I bring those lessons here to you now. So I hope that you've gotten a lot from that massive share from me, today, from this podcast, and I really invite you to come back and listen in for part 2, lessons, in relation to the hardest, 2 to 4 really, years of my life. But what magic gets to come from the other side of that, and who I've been able to become along that journey, so that I can share those lessons with you, so that you can then collapse time and space, I hope is absolutely invaluable to you. So I'm sending you so much love for being here, for listening in to, to all of this. And please reach out. Let me know what you've taken that feels really aligned, for you, and even what you're choosing to leave behind, and how, there's a question that I asked all my clients at the end of the year, at the end of 2023, stepping into 2024. And I think I want to leave you with these questions now. All right, 3 questions. What are you leaving behind? What are you keeping that still feels really good for you? And what are you starting new? I love you guys.